Hi everyone, I'm Jenny. Welcome to Hyphenated, the podcast about living in the hyphen. So Joanna had surgery this week and she's doing quite well. Very well, in fact. Joanna sent Jordy and I some fun post-op videos. And she was so funny and she didn't even realize she sent those. So Joanna is so gifted because she could still find a way to do an entire stand-up act under the effects of anesthesia. So she's doing great. We love you, Joanna. In the meantime, we have a very special co-host today, my dear friend, Curly Velasquez. Curly is an actor and producer who you may know from the hit series Vida and his work on Pero Like. Hey, Curly.
Isn't that so weird? Like, since we were like in Better Like in the beginning together, you knew me as a receptionist, I knew you as an intern. Doesn't it sound so weird like to say like the hit series Vida, like Better Like it's like kind of like meta, you know?
It's so weird how much has happened in just 6 years.
I know. It's so weird. But I'm also very thankful. And I'm also like, what else you got up there, Lord? What else you got waiting for me, Lord? I saw this cool thing on TikTok the other day that said that you should go out into the universe and ask the Great Spirit, like, show me how it gets better. So I literally, like, every morning I'm like, show me how it gets better. I'm ready to get ready.
Así con los teeth clenched. Okay, tell me how it gets better.
Exactly. That was literally me this morning, and it got better. Like I was like, I'm gonna have a good day. I'm gonna have a good day. I'm gonna have a good day, and it's been a fantastic day so far. So it works.
Well, it looks like you had to add some drama into your prayer, which ties in beautifully with today's episode, which is about family drama. And now I'm thinking about the Mary J. Blige song.
Why?
No more drama in my life. So, what do we mean when we say family drama? So let's talk about some good examples from our own lives. Let's start with you, Curly.
Look, I always think that there is this weird thing that sometimes we are not sure what is authentically Latino or Latinx or however you want to identify. And I feel like drama is like one of those things that people are like, oh yeah, that's us. It's authentic. Like people just relate to the drama so hard because I think that like sometimes it's almost muy exagerados sometimes. Like we just like over exaggerate for like one little thing that doesn't even matter. Like in my family, we're pretty chill. Like we're kind of dramatic in some instances. And sometimes like, you know, my mom does that thing where when you're talking to her, she starts to like get really like tight in the face and she like fights the tears and she doesn't want to cry. And, you know, everyone's crying and there's a lot of yelling and all that stuff. But the one thing that I always think about is other people's families. Like I was always the friend that would go over. Oh, I have a pit bull.
Speaking of dramatic
and speaking of authentic to the community. But I have this amazing memory of like going to, it's so funny because I literally was like, I'm gonna tell the story because I'm not really in contact with anybody else who was there, but I literally just started talking to another friend who was there that day that this happened. So if they hate me for the story, they might hate me, but whatever. It's amazing. I went to this funeral and it was the death of a friend's dad. And we watched my friend and the children one by one, they went up to the casket, they kissed the rose, they threw it, they lowered the casket into the ground, they threw the roses after the casket, and one by one, each child picked up a little bit of soil and threw it in over the casket. And then the other family showed up. Like the other kids showed up. And the other woman showed up that nobody knew about, right? So they showed up and it's like, skirt! And everyone's just looking at this other family. And the mom, we call them the mom. The mom of, we'll call them family number one. The mom of family number one was like, not my husband. And she said, sácanlo de ahí, and raise him up. And she was yelling at the funeral people and they had to take off the soil off of this man. And they had to bring his ass back up out of the ground. And basically because she didn't want family number two to know where he was being buried. I thought it was brilliant. I'm just sitting there like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited to be sitting here front row. This is amazing. Like, it's literally like, I understand that this is somebody's life, but it was also in that moment the best thing to witness
That
in real
is
life.
straight out of a novela, dude.
Because honestly, it has so many elements of like drama. It has pettiness. I love pettiness. It's so delicious. Like, forget revenge. No, revenge is still 1994. Pettiness. Does that happen with like white folk in America? Like, are they that dramatic? What do they do?
I've heard many tales. I mean, I feel like there's drama everywhere. But I do think that of all communities, Latinos tend to be the most prideful when it comes to their drama. we like claim that shit like, oh yes, this is what we are about. We'll obviously be covering different areas in which we feel drama stems from the most when it comes to our families and our culture, but I think one of them is definitely this one-upping, this this competitiveness that we're like born with. And it's wild to me because that's how I grew up. Before we started recording, I was like, I don't have a lot of family drama. Like all of my stuff was just kind of like blah. My mom would maybe cry because we weren't helping her clean the house one day, and then she turned that into a whole thing. But I actually dealt with the most drama in school because I was the poor kid in a private school. I know that makes no goddamn sense. Like, I definitely didn't go to, like, one of those super richy rich private schools, but I went to school with kids who were actually extremely wealthy. Their parents owned businesses. Some of them, ran some drug stuff, hashtag Miami. So I went to these small private schools that had a very small student body. And a majority of the girls in my grade were extremely competitive. Their parents had all this money, and they were in tap, ballet, jazz, piano, clown school. They were learning to fly jet planes at 5. I don't know. These kids had all this money, and so they thought they were all like tiny little Hannah Montanas in the making. They thought they were like the next Disney Channel stars. And so I'll never forget, I always tell this story because to me, it's fucking wild how early the bullshit starts. Especially with Latina competitiveness. And it's and jealousy, right? Again, this small private school that I went to was very heavily involved in the performing arts. And from a very young age, you were required to go to drama competition. I was 5 years old, okay? That's how it started in kindergarten, okay? And we had to learn our little monologues and go to this place and compete, and you win little ribbons, first, second, or third place. And I remember I won a second and third place ribbon. And this one girl, who, by the way, never changed, she stayed envious and competitive her whole friggin' life. I went to school with her my whole life. But she was actually, I think, only 4 years old. And my mom was driving both of us back home after the competition. And I was so happy. I had my little ribbons, and they were in between the both of us in the backseat of my mom's minivan. And I remember it was dark, and I'm not going to say this girl's name. She like extended her body over mine. Like she was doing something really weird. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, nothing. And so then later during the car ride, I noticed that my ribbons are missing. Actually, no, my second place ribbon is missing. The third place ribbon is still there.
Oh, well, yeah. Who wants a third place ribbon?
So I'm like,
not even a thief.
Exactly. So I'm like, not even a thief. So, ella se hace like la bien estúpida, like, ay, where is it? I don't know. Why I can't find it. Fast forward weeks later, I'm helping my mom take groceries out of the goddamn, trunk, and I find that the reason why she extended her body over mine is because she was hiding my second place ribbon in the seatbelt slot on my side. That's where I found it. I found a little corner of the ribbon, and I took my chubby 5-year-old fingers, and I pulled it out, and I was like, no me diga. Like, this is a 4-year-old Cuban girl who already was feeling these feelings of envy and just, and I'm competitive, and she won and I didn't, and I'm going to hide her second place ribbon. That's how early this bullshit starts, yo.
I think that it starts like at home, right? Because I think about like my family. My family came over from El Salvador. They came over. They didn't have anything. They came to LA. They all lived in the same apartment, like 25 people in the same apartment in Hollywood. And then the first one bought their house. And then the second one bought a house. And the third one bought a house. And so it became like who has the bigger house? Where's the house at? Oh, I have who has the prettier house? And like whose kids are more behaved? Like
oh, especially the one-upping of the kids and their accomplishments and what schools they go to and who they marry.
Look, I remember when my mom was like, "Oh, tu primo se acaba de graduar. Like he just graduated from college. Like you don't think that you want to go back to college?" And I was like, "Mom, like, because I used to make dresses at the time. I'm like, this celebrity just wore my dress," and she's like, "Yes, but how much money did you have in your bank? Like, how much money have you made?" And it's like, she's like, go back to college. And I know that it's because, people talk about their kids, they get competitive in so many different ways. And there's a lot of like drama that goes into that. I also, I almost left the current company that I work in to go to another company. And this is
I know what you're talking about.
Maybe it's like a little bit of too behind of the scenes, but when I started at BuzzFeed, the person that I worked with, I started in La Cocina, and I used to like be the receptionist, but I spent most of my time in the kitchen, and I would clean the kitchen and I would set up all the snacks. And the woman that I was always with was my friend Wendy, and Wendy is kind of like she cleans, she helps me clean, right?
Yeah, I remember her.
And she goes, "¿A dónde vas? Like, where are you gonna go?" And I'm like, "I'm going to this like company, like a Latino company." And I remember she pulled me aside and she was like, "Mejor quédate aquí, where you're like one of the only," and it's like it's it's problematic advice, but it's rooted in something, right? She goes, "Stay here where you're the only one, and you're not going to get in drama, because when there's a lot of us, when there's a lot of Latinos, she's like, we get really competitive with each other and we get into a lot of drama."
Bro, it's true though.
And look, it was sage advice for me. Like I was like, she's so right. Wendy knows what's up. I don't mean to put her on blast, but like, what's Wendy? Wendy. But like, it's still an interesting thing that like, how is it? It's sad, but like, how is something like that true? Like, entre nosotros, we're so dramatic with each other. I think, to be honest, I think that a lot of it has to go back to ancestral trauma, the fact that we are the product of like colonization. But one of the things that I really do think is the shows that we watch, the entertainment that we see.
Yeah, I know. Oh, Lord. That certainly added to the paranoia and the beliefs and the distrust that especially people like my grandma had in other people. She thought I was going to get poisoned. She used to think that people were so look, there's a lot of things that I realize that, my abuela specifically was right about, because I used to roll my eyes at her all the time about, people not having your best interests in mind. I think we've, you and I talk about this all the time, even in our 30s. It's like, it's still a common thing that happens, especially in this industry, and we have to watch our backs and we have to be careful who we give our energy to and who we allow in our inner circles. So I did realize that there was a lot of things that my grandma and my mom got right, but at the same time, there were things that were really exaggerated. Like, again, my grandma once thought that a friend of mine was trying to poison me. And I'm like, okay, this is where media and like Latino shows come into play.
I mean, you've never tried poisoning anybody?
No.
My grandma gave me a poison ring where you just like flip it open and you just like...
Of course, your grandma gave you a ring with poison in it.
No, I'm just kidding. I did want to say too, like, look, I think that what's interesting is that with the shows that we used to watch, Primer Impacto, Al Extremo Vivo,
just the name itself is already like El Extremo Vivo. I just think about blood and sirens and like caution tape.
What was it called? El Rojo, El Extremo.
Rojo Vivo. It was a Rojo Vivo.
Rojo Vivo, yeah.
And there was El Show de Laura.
Ana Maria Polo. My grandmother will fight you to the death if you tell her that Ana Maria Polo is not real. She's like,
girl, we know people that were actors on the show.
Yes, but she's like, no, it's real. And she's like, I'm like, Grandma, how do you think they get footage of these people? And she believes all these things. She's like, yo vi en la tele que... She literally was telling me the other day, and this might be a little too graphic, but she was like, I saw that somebody put a bat in their butt on TV. And she's like, are you worried that you might put a bat in your butt? I'm like, no, I don't worry about a bat.
That is what your abuela is consuming done with. She's like, my poor
Exactly.
nieto, someone's gonna stick a bat in his booty hole.
That's what him and his boyfriend do. They put a bat in their butt.
Mira, look. I'm sure someone somewhere is sticking bats up butts, but you know what? Okay, but I feel bad for the bats. I feel bad for the bats. But anyway.
You don't know. Bats, bats
Animal
always have to hit
rights.
things. No, not flying bats. I meant like baseball bats. Wow, that really
talking about a bat. And I was just looking at a cute video on the dodo about bats, and I was like, "Pobrecito bat."
Oh my god! If my grandmother thought that I was putting actual flying bats in my ass, I would feel way too embarrassed to bring that up in conversation. I would be like, "No, my grandma never says things like that. My grandma just thinks I'm putting like fucking like giant pieces of wood up my ass."
Okay. Splinters.
But I will say that, it links back to the paranoia. The thing is, what do these shows talk about? They talk about love, betrayal, fucking ghosts, fucking chupacabras, fucking aliens. Like,
and
of
then
course,
Holy Mary appearing on like
and a tortilla.
And a tortilla, a freaking wall, and a sink.
That statue is crying. It cries blood.
And it's like, yeah, it's not even just a freaking like image of Maria. She has to be crying blood. They always have to add the extraness to it.
Every time. So I get it. And I understand that. But it is a thing where you're like, at what point do you have to take a step back culturally, and do we say like, that's not who we are? That is something that's in the TV. That is something that happens like every day from 3 to 4 on Telemundo. It's not really what's happening in my life, and don't get started on telenovelas.
I can't imagine the hours upon hours of that type of media that people like my grandma consume. My abuelo, nah, he just watched béisbol, Los Malen, and that was it. He would listen to his little Cuban radio station and like listen to music. And that's why he had no stress. My grandma was basically me. She's a Scorpio, and she was really on edge all the time. So
is that a Scorpio thing? Because I have a lot of my chart is in Scorpio, and I'm always on edge, and I don't understand why. And I don't understand why I just can't be like a nice, sweet little gay boy. I'm always like, show me how it gets better. Yelling at God.
You sound like a Chihuahua in heat.
Oh my God, I am a Chihuahua in heat, always.
Always.
The other thing too is like, yeah, it just, I will say this, that I feel like me living in the intersectionality or the hyphen, if you will, right? Like there's some of that is dripped into my own life. Like I love, like when I was like single and I was dating, I would love when like a guy would get a little dramatic with me. I had this one kind of like boyfriend who every time we would get drunk, we would always argue, and he would be like, because I fucking love you. And he would hit his chest.
God.
You can't see it. Hold on, because I fucking love you. And I would be like, he fucking loves me. Like the drama, like the grabbing of my wrist, like, no, I love you. Like, that's kind of hot. I kind of like it. I kind of like a little bit of like that. Like, I like a little bit of drama with love, and I like a little bit of drama in the bedroom. Do you find that there's like drama in your life now? Like, have you seen that?
I truly am a sensitive little shit. I cry easily, which again I'm finding out is due to ADHD. It's called emotional deregulation, which makes sense. I can go, yeah, I'm a Scorpio. I'm Cuban. I I have premenstrual dysphoric disorder, ADHD, so I have all these things going for me.
So
where
like, am I dramatic?
Mira, yo me pongo en candela que my poor husband, who's very under the radar introvert, who doesn't like to start shit but knows martial arts, hates it when I start some shit. Pero I don't like it when I'm disrespected. I don't like seeing other people get disrespected, so I really go in for the fight. But in that sense, I can be dramatic. I can get Jerry Springer on people.
You know what I will say? That I don't really like drama, but I love chisme. Like I'm not the one, I don't spread the chisme. I'm never the one to be like, oh, get on the phone, I have to tell you something. Like that's not me. Yeah. But I am definitely like, oh, I don't care what time of night it is. I don't care who I'm with. If you have some chisme, call me. Like I want to know. Yo no me meto. I don't tell, I won't repeat it. I'm a good listener. So you know how some people, they like to be like the chismosa, the chismoso who's like, let me tell you what happened. do you know what happened? Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
very
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm the
yeah.
opposite. I'm
You're
the
just a
one that
receiver.
like,
You're like, bring me the
give me, oh,
chisme.
yes. And then when
And
people,
it feeds your soul.
it feeds my soul. Yeah, exactly. And people are like, oh, wow, how did you not like say anything? I'm like, it's not my chisme to share. But, and then they
Yeah.
know that because I don't share someone else's chisme, that they know that they can share their
They
chisme
can
with me.
share. Yeah. Your description right now reminded me of like Hocus Pocus, where like they get all their youth from like sucking up the souls of little children. That's
I mean,
you
look
with
at this face.
chisme. Like exactly, like it's your natural moisturizer. For me, like yeah, I mean, I think that's what I grew up around. I mean, my grandparents spent so much time looking out their window. Because let me tell you, my abuelo was also involved in the chisme, but more so my abuela. But they would always look across to the neighbors and be like, "Tu puedes creer que Margarita left her?" But it was always like the dumbest shit. It was like Margarita left her light on. Can you believe the electricity that they're wasting? Ay, y fulanito se compró un carro del año. But with what money? Because I know that his girlfriend doesn't have a job, and then they have a like. It's like this like web of information.
Look, I always tell people, I'm like, nowadays everybody has a ring, they have a camera in front of the house, but when we were growing up, we had vecinas.
So, Curly, you've always told me that when you came out to your family, they had a certain type of reaction that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, I when I came out, it was completely by accident. I didn't know that Internet Explorer or the internet in general recorded your history, so I didn't know that when I was like going to go look for gay porn that they could trace that. So
Mm.
when they looked and they were like, "What are you looking at?" and I basically had to come out. But I thought it was going to be like over the top, like I was screaming, I was being dramatic, I was screaming and crying, and they were just like, tell us what happened. I fully expected that I was gonna like I would write letters to Madonna and I would just be like, I'm gonna move to New York and I'm gonna look for you and Madonna's gonna adopt me. And that kind of ages me a little bit or dates me.
Madonna is everlasting.
Madonna is everlasting. And so, but also too, I don't know why maybe my parents just always knew that I was gay. I've never been one of those people who could hide it. Like I just walk into the room and you just know it's a gay dude. Like there's no like, are you gay? Like I have not had to come out since I was like 6. Like the last time I came out as anybody, I was 6 years old. But like, so yeah, it was like not dramatic at all. And then I'm crying and I go to my bedroom and my mom hugs me and I'm in her arms and she goes, you know, it's also okay to masturbate. And I was like, I don't know what that means.
She wanted to just throw that one in there. So I want you to know that it's okay that you're gay, but also you can whack it.
Yeah, also you can masturbate. I don't know if she caught me and was just telling me like, by the way, I also know that you masturbate. Or if she was like, you know, maybe you don't have to have sex with men. Maybe you can just masturbate. You know what I mean?
Well,
like
that could have been her angle.
I wasn't sure what to kind of believe, if you will. But yeah, I mean, it was super chill. I think that I kind of really commend my parents being a little bit younger, having a tia and having like like a younger like Latino family who was kind of like learning how to be more liberal, who was learning how to be more like, we don't have to be dramatic, we're not judging anybody. And so I think that it goes to show that like we don't always have to be on, we don't always have to be dramatic, we don't always have to be like,
no.
Oh, I do want to say though that my abuelita behind my back would be like, she called my tia, she's like, in Spanish, she's like, ¿has oído? El niño es gay. And my tia's like, so what? Yeah.
The grandma that I know?
Yeah, Gladys. Oh my God, Gladys is such a little fake. I tell her, Gladys is, by the way, if you're listening for the first time, Gladys is like I fucking love her. She was so like amazing. But Gladys is a crazy person. Like Gladys would be like, oh, mijo, like, you know, wear my wigs and play with my makeup and play with Barbies. And then behind my back would be like, he's gay. Like, did you know? Like, she was like the chismosa telling the neighborhood that I was
gay. Oh my
God,
Gladys. It's interesting because that is probably the source of most of my drama when I was younger. There was just always, you know, drama with my uncles and my tia politicas and, you know, over like the wackest shit that didn't even matter. I would love to see the day, even though I already feel like I'm old enough and still nothing has happened, but I really want to see the day where we're a little more supportive of each other.
I definitely wanted to say that too before I go. I just wanted to say that, like, yes, there are new ways. It's a new day. We don't have to be dramatic. We don't have to be toxic to one another. Drama can be fun, but like it should not be how you live your life. And we should not connect it to authenticity within the culture. It's not, it doesn't have to be what we are about.
Bueno, Curly, thank you so much for stopping by.
Wow, how time flies. Thank you so
How
much for having
time
me.
flies.
I wanted to say
Yes.
that it is so exciting to see two great women, digital creators, content creators on this podcast. It is so dope. I'm so proud of you both. I scream to see you both together. It's like a collision of two great worlds and two great women. So I'm honored and I'm so happy to be here. To have been here. I love you. Joanna, thank you for letting me hang on your show. This is amazing. I love you too, and sending you bendiciones. And then Jordy, this amazing producer over here. It's been such a fun experience. So thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you for being here, baby.